Well, I can't remember the exact age I was, but it was probably around 3 or 4. We had moved from northwest Evanston to maybe 3 blocks from the Y. And I think that's probably when I first got involved. And that was when I was 4. So I did swimming lessons. I took a cooking class. I did the day camps. I did Camp Echo for 7 years, both as a camper and a counselor. Then middle school, I did state youth and government, or that was in high school. In middle school, I did the girls clubs and leadership, or leaders club, and then after that, I did city youth and government, state youth and government, brilliant teen, kind of everything the Y offered. I feel like I got involved, so it was a huge part of my growing up experience. My brother was the show board president for Brilliant Teen. And also, I think he was probably in the performance, and my stepsister also did Brilliant Teen. So, to some extent. And then my stepmom, Penny Sebring, she was also on the board, as I am now, for I think probably 10 years. And she also does yoga at the Y twice a week and has for the past maybe 11 or 12 years. So, yeah, my whole family has been involved. I think I probably was the most involved, though. And kind of thinking about this, a lot of my memories were at camp, and maybe it was because you're there for 2 weeks, and so a lot of it kind of sinks in and stays with you for a longer period of time. And I probably shouldn't tell these stories because parents might not want to send their kids to camp after I tell you this, but as a counselor, I have a couple of kind of funny memories. At the time, they were not so funny, but I was assigned as a counselor to the sailing captivity, and I wasn't the lead counselor, but and I was kind of questioning why they selected me to be a counselor in sailing because I knew nothing about sailing. But the first day, there were 2 little girls who asked me to go out with them and into the lake, and so we got into the middle, and the boat tipped over. It didn't just capsize, it completely turtled, so it was all the way over, and we were stuck in the middle of Long Lake, all of us a little frightened, and so someone had to come out and rescue us. So that's kind of one scary at the time, but kind of funny experience. And then another one was also at camp. I was a counselor during the Olympics, and the Olympics at camp in general is one of my fondest memories. I just love the Olympics at Camp Echo. It's the weekend between the first and second week, and it is just so much fun. We always had a good time at that. But my best friend Amy Clements and I were overseeing one of the events of the during the Olympics, and it was the bug juice chug. And we misunderstood what the instructions were for this. And the instructions said for the competitors to chug 1 cup of bug juice. Well, we thought it was 1 pitcher of bug juice. So there are 4 campers. 3 of the 4 end up vomiting because they drank so much bug juice. And it pretty much ended the whole, what's it called? The steeplechase, which this was a component of the steeplechase. So it pretty much ended the steeplechase for the Olympics that time. So those are kind of two memories that I have. And again, I hope it doesn't affect any parents sending their kids to camp, because all in all, camp is a wonderful place. Well, my kids are still young, so 2 and 4. So they haven't, they both are in swim lessons right now. As you said earlier, that's kind of how most people get started at the Y. So hopefully they'll continue to stay involved as they get older. And for me, as a parent, it's so wonderful to bring my kids into this space that I spend so much time in, and have them experience some of the things that I experienced growing up. And as you probably know, the Y has really not changed much, both the physical structure as well as just what the Y is about and the feeling you get when you walk into the Y. So it's so much fun for me to be able to share that with my children. I feel like when I step into the Y, I'm kind of in a safe place, and I felt that when I was little, and I feel that now. It feels like home, and I think of some of the people that kind of touched me when I was a younger person at the Y. I think of Mike Duvall. I'm sure you've heard his name quite a bit in doing this. He was I don't know his exact title at the time, but the director of youth programming when I was in middle school and high school. And a lot of my Camp Echo counselors from when I was 8 years old to when I was in high school. So Mary Feifels and Priscilla Feifels were my first camp counselors, and then Steve Newman and Todd Israelite were counselors for me when I got to be a bit older, and they just had such a love of life, and were having such a good time, and it really just kind of trickled down into the campers and just the camp and the Y. And I think that kind of love of life and just kind of being yourself and letting your hair down and just enjoying yourself is so much a part of the Y, which I treasure and I appreciate, and I can't imagine not having that. It's just kind of where everyone comes together. I feel like there's so many parts of Evanston that continue to be somewhat segregated. And I feel like the Y is that one place, or I know there are other places, but one of the few places where everyone kind of comes together and feels comfortable and is just kind of together. It amazes me to look back at some of or just hear stories from long ago on what the Y used to be like. And, men swimming naked in the swimming pool, for example, because, it was only men. It was a men's club. To having two separate Ys, the Emerson Street Y and the other Y, or the McGaw Y. I don't think it was the McGaw Y at the time. And I mean, just thinking about that, I guess that kind of gets to the Y has been able to kind of evolve over this 125 years. And so I think that's how it's been able to survive. It's kind of changed with the times. Fortunately, I wouldn't be involved with the Y if it was still the Y of 50 years ago, for example. I just wouldn't have been welcome. So I think because the Y has recognized how society is changing, I think that's one way they've been able to remain viable, and they've been able to exist for 125 years and remain strong in this community. It's hard for me to imagine what the Y will be like in 125 years. It's hard for me to imagine anything in 10 years from now, let alone 125. I wish, in so many ways, I hope the Y remains as it is, as a welcoming place, and a place where so many people will feel at home. And I think that in order to do that, the Y is going to continue to change as society changes. I think the facility will probably have to change. The way it flows right now is not ideal. It's an older building, and there are needs that probably are not being met because of the facility. In particular, the Children's Center. I think there need to be some major upgrades and probably a new facility for the Children's Center. I think that the Y takes on a lot. There are 270 programs at the Y, and personally, I feel it would be beneficial to the Y to kind of create more core programs, so fewer programs but more core programs, and I think that would make the Y an even stronger place. And I do believe we have some very strong core programs currently, but at the same time, I feel like the Y takes on so much, which makes it a special place, but it also presents challenges. I mean, I almost think of the Y as a younger sibling in that I have never known life without the Y. I feel like I'm constantly trying to get folks to kind of understand what the Y is, and once they get there, they get it, but it's just a matter of getting them there. They feel kind of attached to their health clubs or their community centers or what have you. I don't know what would take its place. And growing up, I don't know how many hours each week I spent at the Y, but it was a significant amount of time for me. And I think that's true for so many kids and so many families. I mean, obviously there would be a gap as far as childcare. There would be a number of men who would not have housing. There would be a number of families that would have to find an alternative place to take their children to go swimming or to go to gym classes, and so I think it's hard for me to know if there are enough places to fill those gaps, but I would imagine there aren't.